Hey, how would you like a safety net in life? Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, we walk through life feeling really vulnerable, like we're walking on thin ice. I play out that scene in my mind from Indiana Jones where he's walking on those tiles that are collapsing and he's trying to find the ones that are stable. I feel like that when I'm walking through life. And the psalmist felt that way as well. And we're going to look at this today, and we're going to find out that we can have a safety net. We can have a security that undergirds, a stability that undergirds all of our fragility. If you feel vulnerable, if you feel fragile, you've come to the right place today. Thanks for joining me. This is Growing in the Gospel. I'm Pastor Cary, and we are pressing into, right now, the month of October, into the fall season and into a new week. And we're about to wrap up Psalm 94. So I hope you'll join me there. Psalm 94, we've taken about a week journey through this now, and we're pressing into our second week, but we're almost to the end. We'll finish this psalm tomorrow, but today we're going to talk about safety, security, underneath all of our vulnerability and all of our fragility. You know, you think about it, life is fragile. Planet Earth is a dangerous place. And we try to secure ourselves and we try to insure ourselves. But the best of our schemes, the best of our plans, the best of our financial successes, it's all just a house of cards. It just takes just a little bit of a shaking, just a little bit of a tragedy or a trial or a circumstance, a storm, a fire, a flood, a natural disaster, some civil unrest, some societal situation, a virus. I mean, any number of things in this life can jolt us that fast, and everything can come into question. Now, I'm not trying to scare you or disappoint you or depress you. We need to. The gospel doesn't say escape, ignore, numb, deny, live in denial. No, the Word of God, children of God don't live with their eyes closed. We don't live asleep. We don't sleepwalk through this life, drunk, numb, painkillers. That's no way to live. God says, open your eyes wide, wake up, look around you, be wide awake, look at what's going on, be aware, be sober, be vigilant, walk circumspectly. God doesn't say don't think about it. He says think more deeply about it. Think more eternally about it. And that's what we do in our Bible time together every day. We look at reality. So I'm not trying to discourage you or disappoint you. I'm trying to just help you see the temporary reality is life is fragile and we are vulnerable. We are living in a house of cards and it will come down eventually. Eventually God's going to dismantle it. But Paul said in his letter to the Corinthians, he said, when this tent or tabernacle is folded up, he said, we groan in our tabernacle, our tent. He's comparing the human body to a tent, which is not a permanent dwelling. You might live in a tent temporarily when you go camping, but you don't live in a tent. Even if you perpetually live in tents, you'd have to continually replace them, okay? A tent is a temporary dwelling place. So he says this body is a tent. And as we go through time in life, we groan. What do we groan about? Well, we groan about everything. We groan about the aches and pains of our bodies and the health needs of our bodies. We groan that life is hard and life is unpredictable. We groan that we need more resources. Maybe we don't have enough money or we can't pay off our debt. We groan that the election didn't go our way, or I'm just being random in my selection of things. Lots and lots of things cause us to groan. But Paul said our groaning is an indicator that we were designed for something else and that this world is broken. We were designed to be and to live in a different context. The death is unnatural, the discomfort is unnatural, and our groaning is a desire to be clothed upon, he calls it, with immortality. Our mortality is what bothers us. Time itself is what bothers us. And what we long for is immortality and timelessness. and sinlessness. We long to live in a body that can't be killed or that can't deteriorate. We long to live in a dimension where time is not an issue. And we long to live in an eternal state where sin does not exist. Somebody commented not long ago on the channel, I can't wait to be free from sin, to stop sinning. Isn't that the cry of all of our hearts? And one day that will happen. But until then, we struggle, we limp our way forward, we're vulnerable in this temporary fallen state, this fallen, broken world. We're vulnerable. So verse 18 of Psalm 94 speaks to this. And I've taken a minute to set that all up. But let's look at it. When I said, past tense, my foot slippeth, thy mercy, O Lord, held me up. In the multitude of my thoughts within me, thy comforts delight my soul. So let's go back to verse 16. Who will rise up for me against evildoers? Who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? Unless the Lord had been my help. Very present, very real, very, very experiential help. My soul had almost dwelt in silence. I almost died. I would have been a goner if God hadn't stepped in. But what happened? Verse 18, now we get a better context. When I said, it's a continuing thought. When I said, my foot's slipping. God, I'm slipping. Now, whether physically factual, that he was physically slipping, I tend to think it's more metaphorical, that he's talking about his whole life, and he felt like his feet, he was walking on a treacherous path, and which in the Holy Land is a common thing. There's lots of trails that go up and down very stony, very rocky places. And so they were always on pilgrimages to and from. They were always journeying, going up into the highlands at certain seasons of the year to graze their sheep, and then down to the lowlands at certain seasons of the year. So the idea of treacherous journeys was a common thing. And the idea of slipping feet was a common thing. If you've ever been to the Holy Land, you understand what I'm talking about. In fact, when we take trips, we encourage people that are just unstable and can't do a lot of walking and don't have surety of footing to not even take the trip, because there's a lot of walking when you're going on these trips. Even though you're taking tour buses to and from, there's a ton of walking, and it's all on uneven ground. It's just all on unpaved old ancient stones or Roman roads or whatever the case may be. It's very treacherous walking, and that's what this life is for all of us. And so the psalmist says, my foot was slipping. I felt like I had lost my footing. That's happened to me many times in the Holy Land. I just start to slip. And can't I say that's happened to me many times in this life? Well, what do we do? What do we do when we feel like we're about to fall off a precipice from some dangerous trail that we're walking, we're traversing in life? What did he do? He cried out. When I said, do you catch this? When I said, he cried out, hey, Lord, my foot is slipping. I picture Peter walking on the water. And what did he say? Lord, save me. I think there's something very powerful about you audibly speaking to God. I think there's something very powerful, not just thinking it, not that you can't pray from your heart, you can, but I mean out loud. Crying out for help. God, I need you. God, where are you? Show yourself. Remember verse 1? Lord, I'm falling. I'm failing. I'm struggling. I'm weak. I feel like this is killing me. I feel like this is crushing me. I can't remember if I've told you this story, but a little over a year ago from the recording of this video, we had a fire at our Christian school. And it was 2 weeks before we were supposed to start school. And I'm thinking, I run over to the school, and all the fire trucks and emergency vehicles there. Nobody was in the building, thankfully. But there's smoke coming out of this building, and I'm thinking, oh, great, what are we going to do? We got to start school in 2 weeks with 370 students. We have a big problem. And I stood out there watching all the emergency personnel do their work and wondering what was going on in the inside of the school. Of course, we couldn't get in. And I walked around the whole property talking to God. And the very first thing I said is, I'm looking at this site and I'm just overwhelmed. I'm completely flummoxed. I'm completely helpless. I mean, totally overwhelmed, like we talked about yesterday. And I said out loud, Lord, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have in mind here. And I surrendered. I said, Lord, this is your school. These are your students. These are your families. These are your people. This is your ministry in New England. So you do what you are going to do and let me know what you want me to do, because I don't know what to do. Truly, I didn't. And, first of all, the fire was put out, and we were able to get in there later in the evening. And then the next morning, we were meeting with contractors and people who could help. And, immediately God began to unfold an absolute miracle. And he provided for a repair and a restoration and a renovation work. The fire was just bad enough that it needed significant renovation. But it was not bad enough that we couldn't do it quickly. It was God orchestrated this event so providentially, so sovereignly. And we opened school 1 week late. We had to postpone 1 week. But in 3 weeks, that school, 50,000 square feet nearly, was nearly completely renovated by a miracle of God's hand. And it was, I don't have time to tell you the amazing aspects of the story, but I think it all started when I said, Lord, what are you going to do here? This is your problem. This is not my problem. This is your problem. And so I use that as an illustration of speaking audibly. Say it out loud. Get it out in front of God. Talk to him like he's standing right in front of you, and ask for his help. Tell him you're slipping. Tell him you're overwhelmed. Tell him you're weak, and confess that you know he is strong. And you know what's going to happen? Same thing that happened in verse 18 with this psalmist. Thy mercy, O Lord, held me up. For many of you that have walked with Jesus for many years, you know this is the experience. If you're a newer believer or young in the Lord or young, I'll just tell you, you begin praying this prayer at every problem and at every challenge and in every moment of being overwhelmed or every moment of slipping, and this prayer becomes your safety net. This prayer becomes the thing that you fall into when your feet are slipping. You don't fall into despair. You don't fall into depression. You don't fall into self-destruction or into bad responses or bad decisions or regretful things. You don't fall away. You fall into the safety net of God's mercy. And you find he catches you in the soft center of the palm of his hand, and he holds you there, and he holds you up because he loves you and he values you. So yes, you're weak and you're going to slip and you're going to feel at times like you're free falling. Don't free fall or don't leap into oblivion. Don't leap into despair or depression. Don't leap into dangerous or destructive things or decisions. No, leap into his hands of mercy. Cry out for his mercy, and his mercy will catch you. Jesus is mighty and strong and merciful and wonderful, and he went to the cross and suffered for you and rose up again victorious and triumphant for you. He defeated death. He defeated despair and destruction and depression. He defeated sin and wickedness and evil, and he is going to catch you if you will leap into his mercy. This is true about salvation. It's true every day after our salvation. It's true the first moment you cry out for hope and help and salvation in Jesus Christ in mercy, and it's true every day thereafter. His mercy endureth forever. So if you are not a believer, the only way you can be held by Jesus Christ forever is on the basis of his mercy, provided at the cross to cover your guilt and shame and sin. So cry out for his mercy and tell him you're trusting him, and jump into his arms of grace and salvation. Claim the gift that is his salvation. But if you are a believer, then every time you feel overwhelmed, every time you feel suffering closing in on you and your foot is slipping, then fall into his mercy and let him hold you up and bring you up out of the miry pit and stand you on solid ground and lift you back up. And then what's going to happen? Look at verse 19. In the multitude of my thoughts within me, thy comforts delight my soul. When you cry out to God and you do what these psalmists are teaching us to do, when you transcribe your experiences and you lift them up before the grace and the mercy and the presence of God, he is going to show up. And he is in the person of his comforter, the Spirit, and in the person of Jesus in you, and in the person of the Father for you, the totality of the triune Godhead with you, in you, for you, working on your behalf. He is going to begin speaking his truth and raising up his promises and bringing remembrance of all of his goodness and blessings and deliverances in your life. And it's going to be a flood. Like the flood of despair, there's going to be a counter flood. There's going to be a counter flood of joyful thoughts, promising thoughts, hopeful thoughts, anticipatory thoughts, kingdom thoughts, looking forward. Hope, anticipation is going to rise up within you and comfort you. This is why Paul talked about the rapture and the rescuing of the church. And he said, wherefore comfort one another with these words. You can never get too much of the promises of Jesus. You can never get too much of the strength and hope and future life of believers, because they're sources of comfort. So the multitude of our thoughts, when given to the Lord, will be comforts and delight. Our souls will be delighted and strengthened and blessed. And we can, you enter into a moment like this psalm and you're despairing. God, show yourself. How long, O Lord? Remember where we were in verses 2 and 3? How long? And hey, all you terrible people, when are you going to be wise? And you brutish people, when are you going to listen to God? I mean, think of the journey of this psalm and think of where this psalmist is now. And it's amazing. Now he's rehearsing the help of God, the deliverance from death. Now he's saying, I was slipping, but God's mercy held me up. And now he's talking about the multitude of his thoughts being comforts and delights. And his soul is in a totally different place. So God's mercy is your safety net. God's hope and promises are the net that you cast yourself into when you're slipping, when you're falling into despair or depression. You land in the safety net of God's mercy, and he lifts you up. And he's going to fill your mind and fill your soul with his comfort and his delight. And it can be very, very real, even in the depths of suffering or sorrow. I don't know where this time finds you today, but I can't imagine what we've talked about not being a source of comfort. It has comforted me, even as I'm sitting here, strengthened me. So that is growing in the gospel for today. What an awesome and wonderful God we have. What a great journey we've had the last 18 minutes or so. Hey, don't forget to drop a comment or share a question. Some of you are asking some great questions. And so, if I miss something or if there's an angle I'm not thinking about and you're thinking about it, maybe it'll help others. Maybe there's someone you know or love that could be helped and encouraged by this time together. Invite them to the journey, invite them to the channel. And I hope you'll stick around and take the journey with us. Thank you for giving me some time to express and communicate God's mercy and God's love to you. I consider it a great privilege to speak God's word into your life. And I'm praying for you. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.